Hi, I'm Kurt from Oz Armour and welcome to Workshop Wednesday. In the last episode, Glenn and Bo were working on the rear idler wheel assembly, pulling it all apart, seeing how it all worked and repairing the damage. This week they're putting the finishing touches on these complicated pieces and putting it all back together. So without further ado, we bring you episode 8 of the STUG 3G.
You'll remember that in the last episode, we had a lot of trouble with the track tightening rods. We have one good original one, but Glenn is going to have to turn out the other on the lathe. The lathe is without a doubt one of the coolest and most satisfying machines to watch, and Glenn is a master on it. It's very easy to undo all of your hard work by rushing or dialing in the wrong settings. Watching Glenn at work, you almost get the sense that the lathe is a part of him. He's so in tune with it. This dial indicates what the size of the thread will be. This dial shows how far the tool will cut into the steel rod. And this is the traversing wheel. When the clutch is engaged, sort of like a car, Glenn can control the direction and speed of the carriage manually. He's got a little bit more to go yet. Perfect. Glenn also turned out this collar that the track tensioning rod fits into. The workmanship is spot on. I know it doesn't seem clear how this all goes together at the moment, but I promise that by the end of the episode, you'll be an expert. Bo spent a lot of time working on the damaged idler wheel bracket. Here he is putting the finishing touches on it before we bolt it to the hull. The tapered bolts we have for this piece are really complicated, and the original ones are unusable. So once again, Glenn got busy on the lathe. They look fantastic. The last step is to quench them in oil to harden them. Quenching in oil rather than water puts less stress into the steel by cooling it slower. It also makes them less brittle. They look like little chess pieces. In the event of an impact, the taper helps prevent the bolt from punching all the way through the armour plate and ricocheting through the vehicle's interior. Now for the moment of truth. Bo is test fitting the pieces without washers. It's hard to see from this angle, but something isn't quite right here.
When we've bolted the this bracket onto the back, we've had a about 6 to 8 mil gap. So without a packer there, it's just pulling the whole casting in, and it's not good enough to tighten up. You need something behind it to be able to tighten it up.
And is it possible they had spaces?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. These pieces weren't attached to the hull. They were blown off, so we don't know. They could have had spaces there we just didn't know about.
We suspect that it's got something to do with the idler wheel assembly having a rubber seal against the hull. If you have any information on this, we'd love to hear from you in the comments.
Got to start working on that other piece. I'll stop talking.
Jess and Bo are test fitting the idler wheel swing arm.
Yeah, I know, I'm strong.
I haven't got anything.
I'm strong.
Yeah. You're gonna have to make one. It's obviously about 8 years again. It's just a nightmare, eh? It's complicated. It is. It's really silly.
Yeah, about there.
There?
In a little bit? About there, yeah. So how far out is it?
About 8 now.
Yeah, about 10 mil packer.
Just had to put a packer in there. I'll prop it up properly later on.
You go up first.
These brackets are fitted inside the hull and hold the swing arm assembly in place. They're only thin and they're badly damaged, but they can be repaired. Parts like these are incredibly valuable. To find detail on these without a real one to reference would make it nearly impossible to replicate properly. key to this whole assembly is this large nut. They're completely seized and we don't have a tool big enough to undo them. So of course, Glenn and Bo just make one. Now this fitted perfectly earlier, but because Bo heated up the nut, it has expanded, and so the tool is just a little bit too small now.
Doing the job though.
Okay, now we've got it all pulled apart. Let's go through how it all goes together with Bo.
Right, so this is the rear track tensioning idler wheel swing arm, I guess, to put it in short. We thought that it was going to be simple and that this collar was just welded to the hull itself, but turns out nothing they did was simple. This is how this swing arm is held into the tank. So you've got these two collars that hold this assembly here on, which then goes through the hull wall and then is attached to a pipe, and then it's got steel seats that sit onto a frame inside the actual tank. And then you've got a thread which locks it in. So the thread stops the whole shaft from being able to pull out of the tank. So it's a really complicated design. They could have made it a lot simpler, but yeah, halfway through sort of disassembling all of this, we figured out how it works. So it's a lot more complicated than what we first thought.
One of the idler wheel assemblies is missing its pipe, but by chance, Glenn found some in his mum's backyard. The diameter matches perfectly. It's time to put it all together.
Done?
I'm still staggered by the level of detail the Germans went to with their vehicles. Look at this little recess they cut into the flat bar to stop it hitting onto the nut.
Pull everything else down too.
Another interesting detail are the holes in this bracket and in the hull. Bo suspects that the bracket initially held a solid cylindrical piece in this hole. As the STUG passed through the production line, a line boring machine would have drilled through the hull and into this solid piece. This would mean that the two holes would line up perfectly.
You got Ukrainian gloves on, Glenn.
In case you're wondering, no, we're not adding that grease nipple.
I hope this fits. Imagine if it didn't go on. Oh, I'd just go home. Having the weight of the track and the wheel on there will automatically pull it. So when I'm undoing this thread right now, it's actually the bolts coming out this way. But when you have weight on it, it's going to want to pull it forward naturally.
One thing I forgot to show was this thread protector sleeve. We're not using this one for obvious reasons, but at least we could copy its dimensions. And there it is. This won't be the last time we see this assembly.
Well, that's all we have time for today. This process was a real challenge for Glenn and Bo, but I think you'll agree they did a fantastic job. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like and share, and join us next Wednesday for your weekly tank restoration fix. So until then, I'm Kurt from Armour, and I'll see you on the next one.